I don't know, do you eat marshmallows when they're not over a fire when you're camping? I don't know, but what I can tell you is these things are real. I just bought them, they're super fresh, you can have one. But you can't feel the fire behind us because it's virtual. Check out the leaves too, they're very subtly moving. Pretty cool. I'm Jeffrey Hope and I run the Journalism and Sports Journalism program at New England School of Communications at Husson University, and this is an experiment. I've brought together students from the extended reality program. They helped create all this background, this cool set. Video production students, they're running that camera. Thank you guys. And thirdly, my journalism students who are running a magazine-style format interview set. So we've taken our usual interview set show out of the TV studio, we brought it into the lab. And I decided to call this project Husson Outdoors. Never done it before, hope you like it.
Hello and welcome to Husson Outdoors, where New England School of Communication students talk about what's going on outdoors in Maine. We're coming to you from Husson University, Ajax Center, and we are in the XR Lab. My name is Kiko Sanchez, and our guest today is Maine Guide and Vanguard Daily News columnist Aislinn Sarnacki. Hello Aislinn, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Aislinn has published 3 books since the outdoors life became her passion: Dog-Friendly Hikes in Maine, Family-Friendly Hikes in Maine, and Maine Hikes Off the Beaten Path. Today we're going to talk to Aislinn about how taking up hiking and outdoor activities has helped her improve her mental health. So Aislinn, I'm very curious, before getting into college, did you expect to end up working on this field, or what were your goals or expectations?
No, I mean, I really discovered it in college, that I was passionate about the outdoors, and part of that had to do with me. I started working at a local outfitter called Epic Sports, and so I got into, I think I started buying all the outdoor gear and then realized I needed to actually use it somewhere, and so I started hiking in college. And also, I did team sports in high school, and so I didn't really spend a lot of time outdoors. I was busy doing team sports like basketball and things like that. And in college, I didn't have those sports to fall back on. So I think a lot of people get back into the outdoors in college for that reason too.
Yeah, no, it was not the first time you started to be more outside. Was in college. You started this life before that, right? Like in one of your books, you say that before high school, when you were a kid, you used to spend more time outside, right?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time outdoors as a kid. I lived in the woods in Winterport, Maine, and I used to spend pretty much all the time just playing outside, often by myself. I was really comfortable in the woods as a little girl. We had a tree house and a big garden, and I would just wander around the woods and just pop out in different, like my neighbor's yard and stuff all the time. So I've had a comfort with the outdoors early on. But I actually didn't do a lot of hiking when I was little. It was more like just right in my backyard.
Yeah, and as a kid who experienced all that, do you think kids now that spend way more time inside with the TV, video games, do you think that can affect them, their mental health or how they act in the future?
I worry about it, yeah. I love video games and games as much as the next person, but I do worry that kids might not spend as much time outdoors as, say, I did when I was younger. Because when I was growing up, we didn't have cable TV, and we didn't have a computer for a long time either. I was quite a bit older when we got a computer. So the only thing to do was spend time outside playing games with your friends. And I do worry that it will impact kids a little bit. It's good to be active outdoors and get that fresh air. And
do you feel like mentally it can impact them? When they get to times like college, for example, when they are not gonna be maybe they are not gonna have that much free time?
Yeah, I worry that it could impact kids mentally. I know that on the other side of that, the outdoors can be great for people in general and kids mentally. There's been a lot of studies about that, and I've just from firsthand experience bringing kids into the outdoors that sometimes indoors they have some behavioral issues or some struggles, and they get outside and they're like a totally different child. They just have this confidence and get excited, and so I just hope that we can continue that trend, trying to get kids outside.
What was the trigger for you, to start spending more time outside, like when you were in college, I mean?
Yeah, so in college I was struggling with mental health. I started struggling with depression, anxiety, and even an eating disorder in college. So I was really having a tough time, and I was working at the outfitter at the same time, and a lot of my colleagues were like, why don't you get outside and do some things outside? And so hiking is like the #1 easiest thing to do outdoors. You just need like a pair of boots and a little bit of gear, but so I started hiking in college for that reason, really, is to improve my mental health and do something that would make me happy. And it worked for me.
Do you feel like it was like big part of what it made you improve? Like,
I do, yeah. I mean, I did other things. I went to a therapist, and I did take some medication. So there was like multiple things I was doing at the same time. But the outdoors component of it, I think, was huge because it gave me kind of this, I don't know, this confidence that I didn't have before that. And it was just an activity that made me super happy, and something like a goal. I always had a bigger mountain I wanted to hike and a bigger mountain I wanted to hike. And for like the eating disorder aspect of it, I had to eat healthy and eat a lot in order to have energy to do that. So it kind of helped me in that way as well. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting to the end of the interview. So do you want to add anything else for this topic?
Just I think there's a lot of studies happening right now with mental health, including there's some trends, great trends, where people are getting children outdoors in outdoor classrooms. A lot more schools are doing that so that kids can learn outside, even things like math outdoors, which I think is great. And then there's a trend of forest bathing as well, which is not bathing in a pool in the forest, but it's bathing in like the sunlight and the fresh air. It's just walking around in the forest with your clothes on. And in kind of letting your mind wander and being in the moment with the plants and the trees and all that. And it's a practice, and it came from Japan, and now it's come to the US. And so that's something that people are getting into now too, and that's all for mental health. So that's supposed to reduce your anxiety and your stress, and there's been a lot of studies that has been successful. So I'm excited to see what comes next in terms of studies and mental health and the outdoors and how that's all linked.
Okay. So thank you very much, Aislinn, and thank you for joining us. This has been Husson Outdoors, brought to you by the New England School of Communications and Husson University.
Hello, and welcome to Husson Outdoors, where the New England School of Communications students talk about what's going on outdoors in Maine. We are here at Husson University's IX Center, and we are in the XR Lab. My name is Isaac Potter, and my guest today here is Aislinn Sarnacki. Aislinn is a registered Maine guide and a Maine outdoor columnist for the Bangor Daily News. She is also the author of 3 books, Family-Friendly Hikes in Maine, Maine Hikes Off the Beaten Path, and Dog-Friendly Hikes in Maine, plus parks, beaches, eateries, and lodging. Today we are going to be talking about wildlife in Maine. Aislinn, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and so I kind of wanted to talk to you. What has your experience been like, with dealing with wildlife in Maine?
I've been so lucky with my job. I've worked as an outdoor reporter at the Bangor Daily News for over 10 years and covered wildlife a lot of that time. So I got to do some really cool things and get to see wildlife up close a lot and do a lot of studying and speaking with biologists. So it's been fun. I probably just feel like I've gotten to do some things that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So.
Right, and as you being a registered Maine guide and dealing with hikers and stuff, what would you say that people want to see in wildlife?
Moose. When they come to Maine, they always want to see moose. Also, I was going to say bear, but I don't know if they actually want to see the bears. Although Maine's bears are pretty, they don't want much to do with people. They pretty much run the opposite direction if they see you. Anything big like deer, they always just really want to see a moose. Birds. People love to go birding as well. And a lot of our seabirds, puffins, I guess would be another big one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, speaking of birds, do you think that they're, obviously you mentioned people like to, see moose and bears and stuff like that, but do you think there are people that are also interested in smaller wildlife as well?
I am, and smaller wildlife is easier to actually find in Maine. There's just more of it. So like snowshoe hares are all over the place. The smaller birds, the beautiful songbirds, different colors. I really enjoy finding snakes, which I don't know at all. People are excited about that. We don't have any poisonous snakes in Maine, so they're all pretty much harmless. And so I always like running into those.
I'm
and
pretty brave for that. So.
yeah, turtles, the fun stuff like that. I even like taking like macro photography, so I'm into even down to the insect level. So yeah, and I definitely run into people that are into nature just as much as I am and enjoy seeing those things.
Absolutely. And you've been on lots of trails in Maine. What would you say are some of the best trails in Maine that really experience wildlife?
I always try to find water somehow. So if a trail leads to a pond or along a stream or to the ocean, that's always a great opportunity to find wildlife because wildlife needs water. And there's those kind of transitional areas. But really, any trail can lead to a lot of wildlife. Even our remote mountain trails that are in places like Moosehead and Baxter State Park, you see evidence of bear and moose all over those trails. By evidence, I mean poop.
Yes.
And you see those animals out there as well. So really anywhere you go, which I feel like is a little bit of a non-answer, but every trail you're going to find some type of wildlife. Even if it's a trail that goes around a field, then you're apt to find all sorts of different types of birds that would nest in that field.
Right.
So you can't go wrong.
No,
You really
absolutely not. And no, obviously, do you think it's difficult to be able to see like stuff like coyotes or deer or moose when hiking? And for those people who want to be able to, maybe run into that, where would you most likely see them on the trail?
So yeah, a lot of our wildlife is shy. So coyotes would be one that I don't see really when I hike at all. Although I do see their scat. So you could become familiar with tracks and become familiar with animal poop, and that's a great way to know that you're actually in an area that has those animals. As far as a place most likely to see them, I guess one bit of advice I would have is go out really early, so dawn or dusk. That's when a lot of the animals operate. So like things like beaver, like if you really want to see a beaver, you'd want to go out in the evening or early in the morning because in the middle of the day, a lot of animals are chilling out. They don't want to be in the sun, basically.
Right.
So that's my big bit of advice, but really wildlife will do what it wants. And so you can't ever guarantee that you're going to see something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And one last question. So say if I was to happen to run into a bear or maybe another type of wildlife on the trail, how would I know that would be far enough away to be safe from that wildlife animal?
That's a great question. I like to take a lot of wildlife photography, so I have to think about that a lot because I don't want to ever disturb wildlife. So a good rule of thumb is actually using your thumb. And I've heard this trick where you extend your arm all the way out and you put your thumb out, and if the wildlife isn't covered up completely by your thumb, then you're too close. That being said, the other thing that I take into account is if the wildlife's looking at me, if the wildlife knows that I'm there and it's looking at me, then that's too close. Because I don't want to change its behavior or disrupt its day. Something like we had snowy owls come down to Maine during the winter time sometimes, and people get really excited, this beautiful white owl, but they often get too close, and the problem with that is then it scares away all of the owl's mice and things that it likes to eat, and it really disrupts the animal, and they don't get enough energy, they don't get enough food during the day. So it's something to always think about. That you don't want to, even if the animal's not moving, you might be disrupting its prey or something that it needs around it. So, yeah,
Yeah.
something to always consider.
Yeah, definitely a lot of good information to take in. Well, that's all I had. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today. I enjoyed this. And thank you for joining us. This has been Husson Outdoors, brought to you by the New England School of Communications and Husson University.
Hello and welcome to Husson Outdoors, where New England School of Communication students talk about what's going on in the outdoors of Maine. We're coming to you from Husson University's IX Center, and we are in the XR Lab. My name is Garrett Munson, and our guest today is Aislinn Sarnacki. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Sarnacki is a noted Maine outdoors enthusiast, having written many articles about the Maine outdoors during her time as a journalist for the Bangor Daily News. She's written many books about hiking the Maine outdoors, with the titles including Dog-Friendly Hikes in Maine, Family-Friendly Hikes in Maine, and Maine Hikes Off the Beaten Path, all available on Amazon. She is also a certified Maine guide, where she helps to assist and accompany people throughout the Maine outdoors. She's been a Maine guide for about a year now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Aislinn, thank you for coming, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, I guess to get us started, give me a brief rundown of what exactly you do, specifically as a Maine guide.
So my bread and butter is hiking and a focus on nature when we go on hikes, and as well as the history and geology, things like that. So I really like to be an interpretive type of guide. And but Maine guides in general, it's a big community, and they do all sorts of different things, like canoeing, kayaking, hunting, fishing, that sort of thing. But I stick to mostly hiking.
All right, that's great. So when did you first hear about the Maine guide program? What inspired you to want to become one?
So my grandfather was actually a Maine guide, registered Maine guide, in hunting. And so I've always known about the program, it feels like. And during my time at the Bangor Daily News, I spoke with a lot of Maine guides, and they're always great references for me when I was writing stories. And it was always a goal that was in the back of my mind, and eventually I just decided to go for it.
All right. So yeah, what was the process of becoming a Maine guide like? What did you have to do?
Yeah, it was pretty strenuous process. It's involved. I don't know of really any other state that has it like this. So I did a lot of studying. I went to some classes. I went to a wilderness first aid course because you need to have wilderness first aid training. I took a map and compass course so that I became proficient in navigating with just a map and compass, because you don't want to rely on electronics in the Maine outdoors. And then it's a testing process through the state. And so there's a written exam, like multiple choice, and then there's an oral exam where you get asked a lot of different questions, and you also have to demonstrate different skills using different materials, like a canoe paddle. You show them how to paddle a canoe. And then they also throw catastrophic scenarios at you, so that you have to answer these catastrophic events and tell them what you would do in a scenario if say, someone with you got hurt or something like that.
So, you'd say it's a pretty difficult training process.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on topic of being a Maine guide, the experience, what are some of the places that you've been introduced to, or that you've introduced people to since you've become a Maine guide?
Yeah. So since I'm a pretty new at being a Maine guide, I spent a lot of time in the outdoors way before actually becoming a Maine guide. And so I haven't learned about any new places since I became a guide, but I have introduced, I hope, my clients to places that I've become familiar with. I do a lot of guiding in Acadia National Park because I live not too far from there. And then I also have guided up in Baxter State Park. But I don't have a specific region I necessarily guide in, so if someone wanted me to guide in another area of Maine, I would be open to that as well.
Yeah. So, since you're a journalist and you've written a couple books, how has being a Maine guide, has that influenced your writing at all?
I think so, a little bit. It makes me look at things with a different lens. As a guide, safety is such a big thing. And so I think about that a little bit more when I'm writing. Being a guide gets me out to have new experiences that maybe I wouldn't otherwise. And so sometimes I do write about that in my column. Yeah.
So I guess for the people at home, what would you tell someone who wants to become a Maine guide or is interested in becoming one?
Go for it. It's a great experience, and you learn so much along the way. And I think there's a lot of pride in getting your guide's license. You learn so much about the outdoors, and even if you're not going to necessarily make a big business out of it, you're going to be a lot safer in the outdoors if you go through that process.
Yeah.
So I'd say go for it.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So that's going to be all for today's show. Aislinn, thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. This has been Maine Outdoors, brought to you by the New England School of Communication and Husson University. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Husson Outdoors, where New England School of Communication students talk about what's going on outdoors in Maine. Today we are joining you from the IX Center and we are in the XR Lab. My name is Brooke Long. Today we have Aislinn Sarnacki joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Aislinn is an avid hiker and she also has written for the Bangor Daily News and she's a registered Maine guide. So Aislinn, today I want to start talking to you about, what was life growing up in Maine?
Awesome. I lived in kind of a rural area at the end of a road surrounded by the woods. And I've just always really loved this state. The community feel, small town feel. Haven't gone very far. I travel a lot, but I always come home.
Absolutely. How do you think that living and working in Maine has informed your way of life?
I think that I am more connected to the outdoors because of it, which I always tell people, if you want to live in Maine and be happy about it, that you have to learn to love a few different outdoor activities, even if it's just going out and looking at wildlife or looking for mushrooms, or it doesn't have to be like this crazy sport, but just enjoying the outdoors year round is kind of key. Year round. That took me a little while because I liked winter when I was a kid, then started to like it less as I get older, and now I'm back to liking winter because I took up snowshoeing. So it's the trick. Find something you like to do year round.
Absolutely. That's very exciting. When you first started hiking, did you have any idea that you would turn what you loved into a career?
No. No, it just all fell into place, which is so awesome. But when I first started hiking, it was really just for my own health and for fun. And then it just fell into place, I guess. I did push it a little bit. I was working for the Bangor Daily News writing about arts and culture and things like that. And the outdoors section, I don't think they had any female writers at that very moment. And so I told them they needed a female perspective. And I pushed myself upon them. And it worked, so yeah.
That's exciting. That's great. Did you have any somebody that acted as a mentor to maybe inspire you to start hiking, or?
So many people. I always tell people, just be kind to people because you never know who's going to give you a leg up in life. It's amazing the people that have helped me along the way. All the people that I used to work at an outdoor sports store when I was in college, and all those people there inspired me, including the owner, to get outside and explore because they were all avid outdoors people, and I knew nothing about it at the time, and so they really inspired me. And then in my career, there's people along the way that have always given me a leg up, and I'm just really fortunate. I feel like that happens as long as you're looking out for it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Has turning hiking and guiding into a career changed the way that you experience it?
That's a good question. I was worried that I would become a guide and then maybe not like it. But I do. I still really enjoy it. I think it's even better now because as a registered Maine guide, before I was writing about the outdoors and helping people get outside by writing about trails and things like that. And now I actually get to be with them and experience it with people in real time and see their excitement and enjoyment of the outdoors. And for me, that's really rewarding so far. So
that's really exciting. What would you say your favorite part of the job is?
Gosh, just seeing people experience things for the first time or see something new for the first time. Like the other day, we were in Acadia National Park and I was guiding some people and we saw a red-bellied snake, and they were really excited about it. They were, and I was too. I always get excited about wildlife. But or when they just feel that accomplishment. I guided some people up Katahdin, Maine's tallest mountain,
Oh, wow.
earlier this year, and it was their first time. And to see them, it was a long day, and it was a successful day, and just to see the joy on their faces at the top, it was worth it to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you didn't work in Maine, where do you think you would be?
I don't know, people say I'd like Colorado. Anywhere where there's like an outdoor, a lot of outdoors, Colorado, Alaska, something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. What advice would you have for someone who wants to turn their hobby into a living?
You can do it. You just have to keep at it. I think, especially as a journalist and a writer, if you're passionate about something, it comes across in your work. So it's almost, I suggest people do it. You know, if you have something you're passionate about, find a way to make it into a career, because you're going to be that much more successful at it because you have that energy behind it.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Well, Aislinn, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you guys for viewing. That's all the time we have for today's show, and we will see you next time on Husson Outdoors.